Hi, I'm Amy from Soft Wind Crafting. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator coming to you from my homestead cabin in South Texas. So the measurements for the card that we're going to make today and the directions can be found in the description below, as well as a link to my Stampin' Up! Website. And I would really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button or even the like button and maybe share my video with your crafty friends. So today we are going to be making this pop-up card that was inspired by Jennifer McGuire. And so here it goes. You open it up and the scene pops up. So I thought this would make a really pretty Christmas cards. I'm in the Christmas card mood, so I was looking for ways to use some of my new stamp sets to make Christmas cards. So what you will need, you'll need some gold foil. You'll need some scrapping up, some Very Vanilla paper to do your stamping on. You'll need a piece of Very Vanilla that is 5 1/4 by 4 to go to the inside of the card. You'll need a piece of Merry Merlot. It is 11 by 4 1/2 and it's scored at the 5 1/2 mark line. So this is 11 by 4 1/4 and scored at 5 1/2. You'll need a strip of Very Vanilla that's 3/4 inch wide. I just did a long one, so in case I mess up I have some room to kind of play with. You'll need a strip of Merry Merlot that is 2 1/2 by 1/2 inch and it's scored at every 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1 1/2 inch, and 2 inches. Then you will need a strip of Merry Merlot again. This is 4 3/4 by 1/2 inch and you only need it scored at the 1/2 inch mark on one side. All right, so what are we going to be doing? We are going to be using the Mountain Air Suite, which is in the 2021 Stampin' Up! Catalog. This is the first time I have used it. I ordered it a while back, but I never got around to using it. And I also used the Stampin' Cut and Emboss dies. So here we go. We're going to be using those as well. And we're also going to be using Rustic Retreat. So I like the bear and I wanted to add a bear to my card. So I wanted to do that. And then I used the framelits to cut on my card, and I'll get started and show you what we're going to be doing. All right, the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and make our box for our pop-up. So I'm going to take that 2 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch piece that I scored at every 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and burnish, or at least fold the box. Then I'm going to take some glue. I'm going to put it on one end. Okay. And I'm going to lay it together and we're going to form that box. So I'm going to go ahead and press it down so I can get the glue to stick, and then I'm going to set it aside to dry so that it'll have time before we put the box together. So now I'm going to go ahead and make the front card. And so what I did is I used the next to the 2 largest oval pieces, and what I did is I took the gold foil and I went ahead and laid these 2 pieces in. Okay, and I made kind of like, so I can make a ring, a frame. And so I kind of centered it and then ran it through the big shot, and I ended up with a gold frame piece here. And so here it's not very even, but I'm going to hide this underneath my label. And then what I did is I took the inner ring and I ran it through the big shot on my card base, and so I ended up, and I kind of centered it, and so I end up now with the center of my frame. So let me go ahead and put my dies away. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this to the front. And the reason I'm doing the card frame, the front first, is because I want to make sure that my scene shows through what I when I set it up on the inside of the card, that I can see that it's going to be what I wanted. So gosh, it's some little pieces of paper. Okay, and so now I'm going to take that and I'm going to lay it on top of my opening so I have a frame, and let that settle down. Okay, so now I'm going to put that aside, and now what I'd like to do is go to work on my inside label. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of a cardstock, and I'm going to use my Stamparatus because I'm using the golden glitz, and I want to make sure I get a very nice impression of Silent Night. So let me make sure. I'm going to go ahead and lay that where I'd like it on my cardstock, and okay, then I'm going to go ahead and lift it up. You grab the golden glitz, which I put over here. It's under my silicone mat, so I didn't see it. Okay, and so I'm going to ink it up. And so the great thing about the Stamparatus is that if I don't get it dark enough to where I like it the first time, I can take it and I can ink it up again, turn it in, and it's going to stamp it in the exact same spot. And so I get a very nice coverage. I want night to come out a little better, so let me go ahead and ink it up again. And there we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the lovely label Pick-a-Punch that is now out in our 2020-2021 catalog. And I am going to actually, before I do this, I'm going to trim this down a little bit. Before I put it into the label punch. And I want to use this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it in the opening. Okay. And then I'm going to come around to the back, and you notice it kind of slipped a little. So I'm going to make sure it's lined up just where I want it on the back of the label. And I'm having a little hard of a time. There we go. And then I'm going to come around and do the same thing on this side. So there we go. And then we end up with a nice little label to use on the front card. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some dimensionals, and I'm going to use the edges of my dimensionals. I don't waste any of my dimensional packets. And then turn that over. And then I'm going to use my paper piercing tool to pull up these pieces. Did I get it? It's being stubborn. There we go. Okay, put that aside. And then I'm going to kind of center it over the top. But I want to make sure, see how I have a dimensional sticking there? So I want to make sure that that is not on there, coming off the, it's going to stick on my card base when I open it up, my pop-up part. So I've just move it down a little bit and stick that in there. I'm going to set that aside, and now I want to make my bear to go on the front. So let me grab a piece of scratch cardstock. Okay, and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to use my bear in gray granite. So hang on a second, bear, where did I put you? There you are. And so grab my gray granite, get the dimensionals out of the way. And I'm just going to stamp him because I'm going to fussy cut him out. I had originally stamped him in the Crumb Cake, but I didn't like the way that he showed up. So what I did is I already fussy cut him out, and okay, so here he is already cut out for us. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place him on my card front. But because this is already up on dimensionals, I only want to put a dimensional on one side, okay? And then I'm going to put glue on the other, that way he's not uneven on the card. If I put dimensionals on both sides and then stick it, he would already, the dimensional side of the banner, he would already be up. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue by his feet because I want him to be a little higher up. Okay, did I get the top? Nope. And I want him to be part of that scene. All right, so now I'm going to set aside. Now we're ready to do the inside of the card. All right, so the inside of the card, I am going to start with my very vanilla card base, and it is again 5 1/4 by 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the golden glitz again, and I'm going to stamp a starlight scene over the top. And I found that with my golden glitz, it takes a very light touch. Otherwise, if I press it in too hard, I end up getting the lines on the back side. So just be very light in stamping into the ink. And then again, it doesn't take a lot of pressure to get it onto your card. So here I'm just going to add some more stars to make a nice starry background scene. And I'm going to add a little bit more right there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over and heat it up with my heat tool so that it has time to dry, so it dries, because if I put it in right now, it's going to smear with this golden glitz. So hang on just a second. All right, I'm back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and place this in my card so that it's ready for when I put in my scene. And notice that I reused my paper. I recycle my things. I try not to waste my supplies, if you've noticed. So here we go. Kind of center that in the score line. Okay, so now I'm going to set that aside because now I'm going to do the inside scene. Okay, so here is a piece of very vanilla cardstock that I'm going to use to be stamping out using the pieces from the Mountain Air stamp set. So I'm going to use this tree scene, this mountains, the clouds, and this particular tree. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to start with garden green, and I'm going to stamp the tree line. And one thing that I have a tendency I like to do is I always try to straighten out my stamps, but if you do that, it's not going to work as well. So sorry, I have some leftover shepherds sticking to my stamps. So I'm going to make sure I ink up my scene really well with my garden green. Okay, and then I'm going to come to the bottom edge because the die that cuts this out is a top cutting die only. It only cuts out the top line of it. Okay. And then since I have my garden green already out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my tree. So make sure it gets good coverage. I want a nice green tree, and I'm going to just kind of lay it right there. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and stamp my mountain in Crumb Cake. Okay, so hang on just a second while I clean the, so I don't get ink, too much ink over my hands. I have a tendency to get ink over my hands anyway. But I'm going to use Crumb Cake to do the mountains. And so here I go. I'm going to, this stamp will be cut out with the die completely. Okay, so I'm going to come up here, give it a good firm press so I can get a good impression. There you go. Let me put that aside for the second. And now what I want to do is I want to do my clouds in gray granite. And here we go. So I'm doing it like this because I can cut out more than one piece at a time with my dies when I run it through my die cutting machine. Okay. my big shot. All right, so in order to save time, I already cut out some pieces that we're going to use to make the card. So here we go. We have our tree line, we have our clouds, and we have our mountain range, and I am missing my tree. Hang on just a second. All right, I found my tree. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our strip of Merry Merlot. This is 4 3/4 by 1/2 inch, and then I scored it at 1/2 inch. I accidentally scored more, but you only need this 1/2 inch. So you end up with a piece that is about 4 3/4. So I probably cut this. Actually, I need to change the directions because this is actually 5 1/4, and then I scored a thing. So one of the things I was trying to do, I wanted to make sure my scene actually fit in my card. So when I fold it and then lay it down, I wanted to make sure it didn't stick out the edge. So I made sure that this didn't extend out any further than my card. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go ahead and put my scene together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue my trees to my mountain. So let me go ahead and do that real quick, because we're going to have to trim it down. It's not going to fit all of this into the card. It'd actually be longer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and in the center of my tree line into my mountains, and I glue it down. All right, so before I go on, I want to go ahead and show you how it does, like putting it up to that line. Okay, there's a lot left over. So what I'm going to do, and we're looking at taking off about 3/4 of an inch of the scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sticky scissors, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to kind of take off, but I want to make sure I kind of follow the mountain along, because I don't want the scene to be too rugged at the end. Okay, so let's see, we're down to 5 1/4, so I'm going to cut out some more, but I'm also want to cut out, kind of take that round. I'm going to cut off from this end too. So I still have about 5 inch. I still need to take off about 1/4 of an inch. So let me get those pieces out of the way, and let's make sure that it's going to lay on there, and it does. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it to leave the 1/2 inch without glue. Okay, don't put any glue on that section yet. All right, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of glue that to the base. Okay, and I want to kind of see when it's laying down. I kind of, oops, I didn't burnish this, so now it's gonna, let's go ahead and burnish your card so you can kind of see where you're putting it. And this is, I'm just kind of checking to see where I want it to lay, but I also want to see where my tree is going to go. Okay, so I'd like my tree about right there. So find my silicone mat, all this extra gluing, and add some glue. Oh, I made a mistake. I put glue at the top here. So let me see if I can get some of that glue off, because I don't want it sticking to my card. I want it to be, so I'll come back and erase some of that glue when it dries. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to add my clouds. All right, so if I were to lay this on my scene, okay, I want the clouds to kind of be up in the air. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to add one cloud like right here. So here we go. I can use some of the glue left over from there to add that particular cloud. Okay, and then my other cloud I'm going to have kind of be between the mountain tips. So let me add a little bit of glue, just a tiny amount, to the tips of the mountains, and then I'm going to add my cloud to that. I hope y'all can see. Now, I cut out in gold foil a star from the Night in Bethlehem dies, the Bethlehem dies, just because I wanted to have a more of a Christmassy looking scene. So I love this little star. So what I'm going to do is oops, that's not sticking very well yet. It hasn't dried, so it's still kind of moving around. Let's make sure. There we go. And I'm going to add the star, but here again, I kind of want to look at my scene to see where, to make sure my star fits in my scene. So I kind of want it right there. So it's sticking to, I want it to be, I guess, on top of the mountain, on top of the clouds, behind the mountain. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. Put some glue. And then on the back of the mountain, I'll get to that in a second. All right, so now what we're doing is we're ready to put this in our card. So what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on the 1/2 inch line. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up, I kind of want to look again and make sure it's lined up where I want it before I actually press down. So there, I put it up against the fold of the card. Make sure it's straight, and then I'm going to press down in order to glue that piece to the card. Okay, so, and then it kind of comes up as a pop-up, but notice how it's laying down. This is what our box is for. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the back side of the box, which is where the line was, and I'm going to put some glue. Okay, and I'm going to place it on the back of my card. You can put it down here. I'm going to turn it around because it wants to fold in that direction. And I'm going to just kind of lay it in there. I want to make sure my glue, this is what's going to give it that pop-up look. Okay, so then I'm going to take some glue and put it on the top. Did I do something wrong? Hang on a second. Nope, that's right. So then, so when it's lays flat, we're going to come in when it's closed and we're going to let it stick. So I'm going to push it down, and then when it opens up, there you go, and your little box opens up. So you got to make sure that it's laying flat in when you glue it down. And there you have a little pop-up Christmas card using the Mountain Air Suite and the Rustic Retreat. So another card that I did, actually, that I started with this, and then I realized, oh, it's a retired card. People may not be able to get it. So what I did is I used the, again, the Night in Bethlehem dies, and I made this pop-up card using the scene of Bethlehem and little star and silver. But I really like this mountain air scene soon as well. So again, I hope you enjoyed these cards. I hope that you will give me a like here on YouTube and possibly subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions about the card, leave a comment. I'll try to answer it as best I can. My website is here, but it's also going to be listed in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Make sure you get out there and start making some cards.